Mi questo ci caga tutte le mie parole.
Ojibwa, the Chippewa, and the Potawatomi. You know, native people live here today. They've been here 1,000 years. Came here for fishing long before the fort was here. They call this area, I believe, home of the fish. Catch lake trout up to 70 pounds in great quantities out there, Straits of Mackinac, and lake sturgeon over 300 pounds. Sounds like a fish story to me too, sir, but you could feed a lot of people here at Mackinac, and they did. The first European here, come join us, sir. Have you guys heard of Jean Nicolet? He was a Frenchman. He paddled through here in 1634 thinking if he heads his canoe west in the big lake, he discovers the Northwest Passage. Takes it straight to China. Nicolet lands. He meets people. He thinks they're Chinamen, but he ended up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Anybody from Wisconsin here? What's that?
Same difference.
He found the area rich, but it was rich in fur. And back in Europe, you had to have hats like ours. This is high fashion. Maybe you can find one of these on Mackinac. You know what kind of animal it would take to make this felt? What do you know?
Beaver?
The beaver, because of the inner part in called the nap that you could actually press in this felt. 50,000 beaver skins pass through here annually, and your fur regions are to the west, your main cities are Montreal and Albany to the east, and the water was I-75. You could get in a canoe and be here in a month. From Montreal, it's only 900 miles. And after we hit that tourist down there, sir, we think you can take our canoe home right over here. You just follow the shoreline of Lake Huron, or Lake Michigan.
You're sending it the wrong way.
How long will it take them to get down to Grand Rapids?
Yeah, in that canoe with the sail, a week and a half.
Week and a half.
You sail right up to Grand.
So that's how people traveled. The water was the highway. And you know, the military here, the French, from 1715 to 1760, then the English, we are mainly here policing and overseeing the collection of fur. The English would come at the end of the French and Indian War, 1761. Come join us, folks. And this is the Red Ensign we're flying today over Michilimackinac. 2 years after the British arrived, have you heard of Pontiac, great chief of the Ottawa? This is one of 9 forts taken by Pontiac, 1763. When they played the Bogadaway lacrosse game in front of that gate behind you, the Redcoats watching on the King's birthday, they attacked, had native women with blankets hiding the weapons. Once the gate was taken, you don't want to be dressed like Keith or Jim here. 25 Redcoats killed, Michilimackinac fell. Are these the recruits I requested, Paul?
These are the recruits you requested, General.
Outstanding. Are they 5 foot 6 inches tall?
Well, we had to stretch a couple, but, you know.
Will they promise to grow, Paul?
They will. They're direct from the motherland.
Are these, they're from England?
They are.
Replacements.
Yeah.
Finally!
Finally they came.
I didn't know they were from England.
The home country.
Are you going back to the home country?
No, they signed up for 2 years.
That's what you think.
Yeah, but the 8th signed up for 3 to 5 and they left us here for 17.
You get to go home now. Been here 17 years, has it been?
Who want? Come grab the musket. We're going to get on the motor coach. Come join us here. Well, Paul, you have put them in good hands.
All right.
We will assign bunks in the barracks.
1 blanket person.
It's 4 soldiers to a bunk bed.
1 candle a day.
1 candle a day. Paul, thank you. God save the king.
All right.
And folks, Pontiac is the guest from our group, Noah, watching the video. He captured 9 forts, including Michilimackinac around the lakes, but he could not take Detroit, Niagara, and Fort Pitt. So the British did come back to Michilimackinac and re-garrison 1764. The uniform we're in is the 8th Regiment. Our buttons have a KS8. We were the regiment who in the Revolution, fearing you Americans, and we finally have them outnumbered now, Keith. We dismantled this fort, and we moved it over to Mackinaw Island. And we built that stone fort on the hill, Fort Mackinac. Is the group going there?
Yeah.
Outstanding. Any of you folks going to Fort Mackinac? Well, that fort is made of stone. That is has the oldest building in Michigan, and it dates right back to 1780. It's called a restoration. Here, folks, this is a reconstruction. It's all based on archaeological work, so that's the key here. Our current dig is behind you, where the ropes are kind of around the dig. They've kind of put the hay bales in to stabilize for the winter. They're digging on a 7-unit row house. Big, long apartment house. Today you'd call it a condominium. One house hooked to the next. And they're just about finished. Oh, come join us, folks. They found a root cellar over here that extends down. And that has caused them a little more work. But they're finding a lot of artifacts in that root cellar. Probably the nicest artifact we recovered this year was a coin. We don't find a lot of coins here at Michilimackinac. It was a half penny. But they found a lot of gun parts in that root cellar, and there's some buildings Keith and I would not want you to miss. The one on the other side of the barracks, the underground exhibit, it's called the British Trader's House. Blue shutters by an herb garden that talks about archaeology and has the best of our over 1 million artifacts they have dug up here since 1959. Another great exhibit is a firearm museum. It's called the Chevalier House over here behind you. Go underground. You'll see where the powder magazine was located. It was like a big root cellar where they'd store the ammunition. At times, 55,000 pounds of gunpowder would be kept in there. And when the British decided to move the fort to the island, they couldn't move that building, so they cleared it out. When they burned it, the dirt collapsed in and put the fire out. And we found the actual charred floorboards and sidewalls, and then reconstructed a magazine over the ruin. So you're going to see a lot of the old fort inside many of these reconstructions. So I know for the group and for our visitors here, you probably have come to see this musket fired off. Now, Keith, this is our chance. Since May, we have not got a single recruit. We have English people here. Certainly, they're all loyal to the king. We ought to get a recruit from these people.
We've
No,
been here
Keith?
a long time.
Keith just said, you don't have a queen now, do you?
We've been here for so long, and we haven't gotten a newspaper from home in years.
And when you go back to England, remember, there are 2 redcoats stationed here. Keith and Jim.
We'd like our back pay sent,
Back
please.
pay. And if it's the queen, tell the queen we want back pay. Recruit them, Keith. This is our opportunity.
Well, thank you, Jim. As Jim said, during the 1770s, it was the King's Regiment, also known as the 8th Regiment of Foot, that were stationed here. There were 2 companies of us. There was a company of the Battalion Line Soldiers, that's what Jim and I represent. There was also a company of the Grenadiers. Now, to be a grenadier in the 18th century, you had to be 6 foot tall, which explains why I'm not a grenadier. I'm too short. But basically, their uniforms were pretty much the same. The biggest difference, the biggest noticeable difference was the hat. We wear a tri-cornered hat, which Jim mentioned was very fashionable, but the grenadiers were given an 18-inch tall bear fur hat called a shako. It made them look even taller. Now, why the 6-footers got the hats that made them look bigger, I don't know. They should have given it to us short guys. But nevertheless, the uniforms were pretty much the same. The weapons we carried were identical. What they gave us were these. This is a short-land pattern musket, commonly known as the King's Arm during this time period. Just a little bit after this time period, it acquired a different nickname that it became widely known as. It became known as the Brown Bess. Now, this firearm is a 75 caliber smoothbore. 75 caliber means it shoots a musket ball. It's 3/4 of an inch in diameter, so it's a fairly large bullet. Smoothbore means there's no rifling inside this barrel. If you were to look through this, it looks like you're looking down a water pipe. There's no spiral or groove like you would find inside of a rifle. They did have rifles during the 18th century. And in fact, in the hands of a well-trained marksman, an 18th century rifle could be very accurate. sometimes even accurate to beyond 300, maybe even 400 yards. But smoothbores were not very accurate. In fact, soldiers like Jim and myself were expected to hit a man-sized target only at the distance of about 80 yards. These were flintlocks. Right inside the jaws of the hammer, there's a piece of flint. When that flint comes forward, it's going to strike this piece called a frizzen. That frizzen will actually be in the closed position. Now when I pull the hammer all the way back, it's going to come forward, it's going to strike the frizzen, it's going to pop that open, and right there in that pan, there's going to be a little bit of gunpowder. Hopefully those sparks will drop into that powder, ignite the powder in the pan, throw fire and flame in every direction. Some of that fire should jump through a small hole in the barrel, ignite the main charge, and send the musket ball down the barrel and towards the target. Now, if all of that happens, it happens in just a fraction of a second. But you notice I said if that happens, I didn't say when that happens. These guns are not 100% reliable. I know if you watch movies like Last of the Mohicans or Revolution or Patriot, their weapons always work, regardless of the conditions. That's Hollywood. In reality, 80% of the time, on a dry, sunny, perfect day. On a wet, rainy day, there were days that they wouldn't work at all. But we have a gun that's not incredibly accurate. It's not 100% reliable. Why were we given these things? What advantage do they have? Any ideas? They're fast to load. They're very fast to load. Rifles of the time period would take upwards of a minute and a half, maybe even 2 full minutes to load. A well-trained soldier should be able to load and fire and operate this weapon in 15 to 20 seconds. So 3 to 4 rounds a minute compared to a rifle that could only fire 1 round every minute and a half to 2 minutes. Now, we've got some serious shortcomings on this weapon, though. They're not accurate. They're not 100% reliable. What we would do, now keep in mind, is all of the 18th century armies fought in linear-style warfare. The English army at this time in history was the best professional army in the world. Their soldiers would line in ranks like you folks are seated. The first rank is going to step forward, and they're going to fire a volley, all on command. They're going to send, well, hopefully 100 musket balls, but out of that 100 men, realistically, probably about 80 musket balls downrange towards the enemy. The second rank, they're going to step through. The first rank's going to start to reload. The second rank is going to fire their volley. The third rank is going to step through. They're going to fire their volley. By now, the first rank should be reloaded, ready to step forward and fire again. And you would keep a continuous field of fire generated towards the enemy. The problem is, they're down at the other end doing the same thing. When you get close enough, the officers would give the order to fix bayonets. Now, these bayonets are incredibly gruesome weapons. They're 18 inches long. If you look closely at it, you'll notice it is 3-sided. It's triangular shaped. And of course, this is the modern state-of-the-art bayonet. This is not a plug bayonet. This does not go down into the barrel, but instead this is a socket bayonet. It mounts on the outside of the barrel. It locks in place, and I can still continue to load and fire. This is a standard design for modern bayonets. This is one of the first times that it was used. Prior to this, like I said, they had plug bayonets that would go right down into the barrel. You could no longer fire the weapon. You could only use it as a pole arm. But this weapon with an offset bayonet could be loaded and fired. By doing so, though, when you fire it, you're going to coat the outside of this blade with burned black powder soot. Now, like I said, this is a 3-sided bayonet. It's an incredibly gruesome weapon. It makes a hole that is very difficult for a surgeon or surgeon's mate to sew shut. If they do manage to control the bleeding and close that wound, that powder residue has been left inside your wound. Chances are the infection would probably do you in anyways. So the bayonet was a very gruesome weapon. Unfortunately, it was usually the battle decider. If you could sweep the enemy from the field with a bayonet charge, there was no question about who had won. In order to fire this thing, of course, we have to load it, and we have to do so quickly. We were given paper cartridges. Everything we need for one shot, right inside this paper tube. Musket ball in the bottom, gunpowder over the top. It's folded over and stored in your cartridge box. How am I going to get this open quickly? My hands are full.
Rip it open. Your teeth.
Exactly. Tear it open, discard the tail, pour a little powder in the pan. Oops, not that much. Wind up with one eyebrow if you overprime these things. The paper goes in and acts as a wadding. Normally that musket ball would be inside that paper, but they don't want us to shoot holes in the motor coach or anything, so we don't have a musket ball in there, but it would normally be in the very tail of the paper. When you invert it, it winds up on top. Take your rammer, compact everything to the bottom, and the weapon is now loaded, primed, and ready to be fired, since I don't want to litter. Now, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to wear some modern hearing protection, unless somebody wants to come stand behind me and plug my ears for me. But I would recommend, folks, in all seriousness, these weapons are incredibly loud, that you do cover your ears, especially here inside the fort where the sound bounces off this wooden stockade and off these buildings. It is incredibly loud. Please do cover up your ears. We're going to fire 2 shots. We're going to fire 2 separate volleys. We're going to fire to the commands that they would have used for the entire rank when they stepped forward and fired. So be ready for the 2 shots. Poise your firelock. Cock your firelock. Present. Fire. Prime and load.
We don't know if we ever smoke it or not, but it's done. Oh, that's it.
Poise your firelock. Cock your firelock. Present. Fire. Right about. Face.
Smoke on that one.
Style warfare. So it was not a matter of camouflage. Yes, the British Army did employ specialty units like the Queen's Rangers and Rogers Rangers that wore more of the green earth tone colors, that would hide in the woods and would fight more Indian style. But your regular battalion line soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder and slugged it out until we could drive the enemy from the field. Now, are there any questions about the weapon? No questions. All right. The next thing, what's that? Oh, yes, sir. Well, you can have a number of misfires where you don't have anything now. You pull the trigger and the gun just does that. There's absolutely nothing. That's called a misfire. Sometimes only the pan goes off. It's called a flash in the pan. Sometimes you get what's called a hang fire, where the pan goes off and then momentarily later the barrel goes off. So there's all sorts of problems with these things. Mostly associated with bad weather. The powder gets a little damp, the barrel gets a little wet, you've got a little spot of oil inside the touch hole from when you cleaned it the night before. There are problems. We try to avoid them just like they did, but they still happen to us. So, yes, sir.
How do you clear a misfire?
Depending on the severity, if it's just the pan didn't go off, most of the time what we'll do, the first thing we do is we just recock the musket and try it again. If that doesn't solve the problem, we're issued a combination tool. It has a little striking hammer up here. You cock the hammer back to the safety position and you resharpen the flint. If that doesn't fix it, you change out the flint. If that doesn't fix it, there's probably a problem with your frizzen. You have the blacksmith reharden the frizzen and you eventually can clear it. So, but there's a number of series of steps that you go through to clear whatever might be wrong with it. But it rarely is anything more than having to change the flint. No other questions?
How heavy is it?
It's about 10 pounds with the bayonet off, about 11 and a half with the bayonet on. So it's not a terribly heavy weapon. There are 2 holes drilled through it, one here and one through the stock. When you're in garrison, that is to say when you're in the fort, you take your sling off. This weapon is equipped with a sling that you can put over your shoulder. When you're out on the march, you would have your sling on. If they so decide, they can tell you to break step, and then you can just walk comfortably and you can sling it over your shoulder. But most of the time you just carried it. But I also have to mention one other thing. The way that Jim and I are dressed, these are our regimental coats. This is your dress uniform of the 18th century. Most of the time you'd be in your work clothes, your fatigue uniform. Only when you were on active guard duty would you be walking around dressed like this. Well, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the lake shore and we're going to fire the cannon. But you guys probably don't want to see that, do you?
Yeah.
All right, then let's go to the lake shore and make some noise. Okay, we're going to start out with a quiz. Why is this gun called a 6-pound cannon? It shoots a 6-pound ball. Absolutely right. Called a solid shot. Most people would call it a cannonball. Proper name is a solid shot. It's solid, 6 pounds of cast iron. Now they had different orders. Fire a 6-pound ball like this about 1 mile. Look out on the Mackinaw Bridge and you see that large concrete anchorage. Count back 3 of those shorter, skinnier piers. That's about a mile. Knock it off. That's the maximum range for this gun. The maximum accurate range is about half that distance. About a half mile. You can also fire a great shot off this, which is a cluster of musket ball sized cast iron shot. You can't put the other range where the firearms in there. They cost about there was also another type of shell that pretty much looked just like this, but it was, pardon me, it was not solid, it was hollow, and it was filled with black powder. We fired out over the lake with fancy engines, black powder. Very effective anti-personnel device. So the cannon itself, with its lumber, weighs about 1,800 pounds. We normally have a crew of about 15 men operating. Take care of all of the loading duties today. In place of those 15 men. The first man, main cross, uses something called a wad. Mark that down the barrel. Hooks any debris left from the previous shot. Once it's sure there's nothing down there, which I think he's looking for something that he can feel. Sometimes you can feel it just in a hole. He's going to take a wet sponge. He's going to soak that in water and then run that down the barrel. That will extinguish any sparks or embers that might be left in the previous shot. Now, of course, the barrel's wet. We need to dry it. So he's going to use a dry sponge to soak up any excess moisture. Now, with that done, we can quickly and safely run down a charge of powder. This is a 6-pound cannon. The standard working charge is 1 pound of powder. Normally it would be wrapped in muslin or in linen, not in aluminum foil. But we don't want to set the beach on fire today with low water. We might start a grass fire out there. It's a common problem in the artillery firefighting. A lot of times you set the water on fire, burning powder bags. Rams after the breach with the crook rammer, stand out of the way and the event can go off. Now, main thrust can step away, the gunner can come up. He's going to take a small brass pick. He's going to poke a hole through the charge in that cannon. Well, what we can do is we can... What? My turn? Handy for the priming charge. I'm supposed to leave it up there. I put it someplace where I wouldn't lose it. Where's that gunpowder? Comes out the cannon. Powder chamber itself. We're going to make some smoke in that cotton cord and have that wheat stock. Like this, you're going to light up a quick steel. Started fires in the 18th century. Looks like we're ready to fire. Everybody ready? Boys, fire! You're right, absolutely. Sail on the North Shore. Stay away from it. Feel free to look through the exhibits. Jim and I are going to go clean our muskets, and we will be back inside the fort shortly. Kate is inside the one line house doing, I think she's finished the cooking, but she'll be happy to answer domestic questions. Working on some small projects today. So feel free to look through the exhibits, and we'll be back inside in just a moment.
And this is the archaeological dig for the...
So they found a root cellar, so they put the hay in there to reinforce it for the winter.
Cool.
Because I think I'm getting there. I hope I'm getting there.
Yeah, there's, you have to let them dry for a while and then re-dip them.
Yep, exactly. And they're getting heavy enough to keep pulling my sticks together. So I think that's a good thing.
Oh. Are you drying apples on that string?
It makes it smell nice in here.
Yeah.
When the fire's going, and even when it's not, it doesn't get musty in here that way. Give them a few more dips.
have enough tweaks fixed
Yeah.
together. Okay. I'll be along in a minute. There's the candles. Let's see.
This wasn't the only way to make candles either. They did have, you could pour the wax into a mold and make them that way. Those were very expensive, very nice for special occasions only candles. You could also, this one in here. You can just heat the wax up till it's pliable and roll it around a wick.
Oh, molded way, by yourself.
Yeah, just by hand. Those are much faster, but they don't burn as long. They don't burn as bright. So
This is the best way for
Well-
a utility candle?
for a utility candle, yes, this is.
Oh, interesting. Very, very good. Now I know how to make candles.
Of making candles. Take them. I started with just a piece of yarn and I've been dipping them in the wax, and they get a little bigger every time I do it. A very little bit bigger every time I do it. So they're just about done now, I think. I keep pulling my sticks together, so I think that's a pretty good indication that there's not a lot more to do. This wasn't the only way to make candles either. You could pour the wax into a mold. Those were very expensive, very special occasions only kind of candles. And you can also just take and just heat the wax up.
moved to United went back a little ways. Nothing serious, but. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a long time to get it up to heat with that thing too. Leaks like a sieve. How are you today?
Okay.
Button up here a little bit. Pick up all the stuff that fell off.
We didn't have as good of a year this year with the rose hips.
No.
So I don't know if I'll have to go check and see if we have some over there.
And I hear the pumpkins haven't done too well this year.
Not, we had great squash and zucchini. Yeah.
Ah.
Wonderful squash and zucchini.
Oh, well, that cancels out my
It
idea.
does.
There wasn't much rain.
We'll
I
be
thought-
glad to eat those.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, squash and zucchini will grow just about anywhere. That's true. It's kind of hard not to have a good squash and zucchini.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We call it courgette at home, and you cut one and you get two.
Yeah, yeah, really do. That's
Yeah.
why we're kind of looking for different recipes to
Yeah.
to try on a couple of these because
Yeah.
there's a lot of it there. Hello.
Oh, well, hopefully you wouldn't starve.
Oh, hopefully not. That's what we're
That's
what
the
we're
main
hoping
thing.
for with that. You want to store away as much as you can.
I bet.
Fugitives were enlisted, but Roman Catholics were rejected. Of course, he was rejected.
Ooh, come look at this.
Heavy that thing.